Good evening. I'm Jim Rusto, the president of the Greater Bellevue Area Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Greater Bellevue Area Chamber of Commerce and the Bellevue Leader, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for attending the 2018 Bellevue City Political Forum. The Bellevue Chamber serves as a full-time advocate representing your interests in the political arena on issues that affect our community. The Bellevue Chamber takes your message face-to-face to elected officials to help ensure Bellevue is a competitive place to run a business. It's our pleasure to host tonight's political forum along with the Bellevue Leader. Tonight we have the mayoral candidates and one council ward representing Ward 2. We're going to start with our council candidates first with the questions for tonight's forum, and then we'll reset afterwards with our mayoral candidates. Hopefully we'll take each one about an hour on each side, and we'll reset after our council candidates for our mayors tonight secondly. So the format for the evening will include a 3-minute opening from each of our candidates, then a question and answer session where each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question, and then 1 minute for a follow-up response. We'll accept audience questions in writing and select those questions at the end for each question as time permits. What we do ask is that we don't have any audience direct questions to the candidate. This way it keeps our forum moving along. We'll have Faith moving around. You'll see her over here. She'll be holding cards up. So if you've got questions, you can submit those questions as the forum goes forward. The other thing is our candidates, if you look to the front, Lisa will have on the timing sheet, she'll get you at the 30-second, 15-second, and then the eraser comes out at the stop. So just a little housekeeping here. Tonight's event is being recorded by the Bellevue University. I'd also like to thank Bellevue University for opening up their auditorium and participating in helping us film this. This will be available on Channel 17 and BTV. Phil's here with the city, so you'll see this as a follow-up along with YouTube and some of our social media. So you'll get another crack at this as well as some coverage in our Bellevue Leader afterwards. So again, thanks to our candidates for running for a very important office. Now I'd like to welcome Ron Petak to the stage. Ron is our executive editor with the Bellevue Leader and will serve as tonight's moderator. So Ron, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jim. I'm honored to do this once again to the candidate forum. We do this every 2 years, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the candidates have to say tonight. We drew just a little while ago to see who would have the first opening statement, and we will begin with you, Mr. Stinson.
Good evening. My name is Bob Stinson. I've been a resident of Bellevue for 57 years. I'm 59 years of age, so all but 2 years of my life have been here, so I consider myself a lifetime resident of Bellevue. I'm a retired Bellevue police officer. I was a police officer for 25 years here. Retired in January of 2016. Prior to my law enforcement career here, I worked for the Dodge County Sheriff's Office, where being a lifetime resident here in Bellevue, you can tell that I drove back and forth to Fremont every day to work there. I was also a Bellevue volunteer firefighter for 19 years. Was on the Board of Trustees for the Bellevue Fire Department. Also served as the rescue chief for Bellevue Fire. I was also on the AAC committee for the Bellevue Police Department. And I am the son of a retired Bellevue police officer, Ken Stinson, who was on from 1961 to 1981. I've been married for 39 years to my wife, Linda, who works at Mutual of Omaha. She has put up a lot in the past almost year now since I decided to run for this office. And I think with only 5 weeks left till election, we're going to make it to 40 years. So, other than that, I'm running for city council. As I said, prior to my law enforcement career, I worked for the Bellevue Parks Department. And so I've pretty much worked for Bellevue my entire life. And this is just one more way I can give back to the city. I have seen the city go through growing pains and some good things and some bad things. And I want to help bring some of the good things back to Bellevue. help bring some business to Bellevue, get infrastructure put in, and just try to get Bellevue back on the right track. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Ron. My name is John Hanson. Pretty much lived here my whole life. A little bit older than Bob, but I've been here about 60 years. I moved here with my parents, military, and when I was 10 years old. I basically graduated from Augustana University, which is Augustana University, used to be Augustana College, and graduated also from Bellevue High School, and then spent 2 years in the Army, U.S. Army, and then came here and got started in a real estate career way back in the early 70s. I was a general manager of a large real estate company at that time, and then in 1976, along with my partner, we formed Century 21 Century Real Estate, which you've probably seen on the Hill. My partner, Pat Hart, passed away in 1999, and subsequently then I started my own firm, Century 21 Hanson, and I had three offices actually, one in Bellevue, one in Papillion, and one in Plattsmouth. I've been very fortunate. Bellevue has been very good to me. And my wife, Janet, she's down here, 49 years coming up, 50 coming up, and she said say the word happily married for the last 49 years. So, and Janet's a retired high school counselor for Bellevue East. Our three kids all live in the local area. My wife, my daughter's a third grade teacher at LeMay Elementary. I can tell you I'm a real positive person when it comes to Bellevue. I mean, Bellevue's been very good to me and our family, and my livelihood has been made here. I've been involved a lot with economic development. My office was recognized by the Bellevue Chamber and also by the Sarpy County Chamber with different awards over the years. I've been involved a lot with the trade organizations like the Omaha Real Estate Board, the Nebraska Realtors Association, and I'm a founding member of the Bellevue Offutt Advisory Council, and I'm currently the president and also a founding member and the president of the Bellevue Community Foundation, which does a lot to help different organizations within Bellevue. And in fact, I think so far this last year, we've donated over $200,000 to different organizations and projects within Bellevue. I'm very excited about it. I'm a positive person. I believe in Bellevue. I grew up here. My whole family's been raised here. I love the schools. I love the community. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. A reminder, as we go through these questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond and then a 1 minute response to that after that. So we'll start with Mr. Stinson. What are your plans after the election to create a working relationship with other council members and the mayor to create a smooth transition?
I think the key to the city council is communication between each other. I will be open to listening to the ideas and the suggestions of the mayor and the other council members. We all need to remember we are here to serve the citizens of Bellevue. We need to serve the city of Bellevue with honor and integrity. To me, integrity is a huge part here. That's something that's come into question a little bit, and we need to get that back into our city administration and everything and make sure that people know that we're open for business here. We all need to be on the same page on the issues put before us. So before going to a council meeting, we need to make sure that everybody's on the same page so that when we get before the public, we are not doing any bickering up on the stage up there, and that everything runs smoothly. If we all work together and we communicate between each other, there's nothing that Bellevue can't accomplish. We need to work hand in hand with the Chamber of Commerce to get business brought here. By doing that, it's going to help our tax base, it's going to raise it up and help bring needed business here and help to fund a few things that we need, especially like our fire department the last time. We had a little problems with that this year, and we need to get that corrected. So communication is what I believe is going to be the key part to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of the things Mr. Stinson said. I think open communication is very important with all the members of the council, including the staff at the city, including the mayor and also the administration. I think we need to have that dialogue all the time, because what we need to do is, if you've seen over the last, few months and years, whatever, there's been some dialogue that within the council that, doesn't seem to respect each other. I think we need to do it with total respect and dignity. Even though you might not really agree with what person's going to say or do, I think it's very important for us to go ahead and respect their point of view and do the best you can, because we're all working for the same goal. One thing I'm not is a micromanager. I think the council really needs to be a public policy-making type board. Instead of micromanaging, we have a lot of different groups and task force. We have the Planning Commission, the Design Review Board, all kinds of folks that spend a lot of time researching things by the time that it comes to the council. I'm not saying that their decisions could be overturned, but I don't think we can sit there and say, oh, I think we can do that, we can do something better. I think these are very qualified people, many times very qualified in the fields of why they were picked to be on that. For instance, budget, it could be, could be anything from the design review. They're usually architects, things like that. So I think we need to respect what those committees are doing and not second guess them all the time. I think it's very important to treat everybody with respect and go from there when we're trying to all work together for the same goal. Thank you.
Mr. Stinson, you have 1 minute.
I've been attending these council meetings, and the bickering that goes on in these council meetings is embarrassing to the city, and we need to stop that. Any differences that people have should be done behind closed doors. It should not be out in the public so that everybody is seeing the arguing and things. When you end up watching Channel 17 on Cox Cable and seeing council members and city administrators and everything bickering back and forth, it's just not the place for it. So hopefully we can get that accomplished and stopped. Thank you.
Mr. Hanson, 1 minute.
And I don't disagree with that. It's very difficult for me to actually sometimes watch a council meeting on TV. I go there and look at it and say, oh my gosh, this is us. And I think sometimes it gives us a bad reputation, but I can tell you, from my standpoint, I don't think you've ever seen me in that particular role trying to act or calling people names or, degrading somebody or their job or anything like that. Treat them with respect. Vote the way you think your conscience would go, and also your constituent, but at the same time for everything in Bellevue, representing everybody, and do the best job you can to keep moving things forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Our second question will begin with Mr. Hanson. What is the city's role in economic development, along with creating partnerships with other entities? You have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. I would say that, and also I agree with working with the Chamber. I think the Bellevue Chamber is a very integral part of what we're doing. Recently, we donated, I believe, $10,000 to the Bellevue Chamber, along with $15,000 to the Sarpy County Economic Development Corporation, which I think is important too, because they represent the whole metro area. And when you represent the whole metro area, you can't focus only on Bellevue. Naturally, this is what we want, but they take a look at that, and we have actually, I believe, quarterly reports from them, kind of bring us updated building permits. They bring us up to date on commercial, residential, things like that. I think it's very important that we plan for our, and be a conduit for business. Most recently, you probably read in the paper, Dunkin' Donuts is going to go at the corner there right across from Walgreens. That building's been sitting vacant for 5 years. The city has stepped up and said, okay, we'll vacate that turn so we can get more access to that business. Well, that's going to be great for the dentist that's right next door, Walgreens across the way, and that's what we can do. And that's actually going to be a shared expense between us and the developer there on a redevelopment map. So that's just an example of what we can do to help facilitate those different businesses that might come in, not necessarily make Bellevue not a happy place to be. Offutt, very important. Offutt Air Force Base, of course, our largest employer. I'm working personally with a lot of them on maybe doing some partnerships right now. They've closed both their pools. They've closed the library. We're negotiating a little bit with some federal property that perhaps we can do a partnership and have a regional pool out towards west, which we don't really have. So these are some of the things that we're working on. Partnerships, private, personal, business. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson.
The city must create and maintain an atmosphere that desires business growth, where public-private partnerships are welcomed and encouraged. I'm eager to get to work at bringing the city and the business community together to move Bellevue forward. I will accomplish this by working hand in hand with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm not 100% sure that that is happening right now. If the council will start working closer with the chamber, I don't believe there's anything that we can't accomplish here in Bellevue. But you have to have that partnership between the two. Voters deserve leadership that for them by welcoming business development, and I intend to bring that leadership to Ward 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson, you have 1 minute.
Okay, and again, working with the chamber, I think is very important, and I can tell you that I serve on a national committee representing Offutt Air Force Base on the Commanders Group for Air Combat Command, and Jim Risto is my alternate. So Jim and I have visited different Air Force bases on behalf of our area, thinking that we want to keep our #1 employer here, and we want to keep our missions here, and we want to attract new missions. And that's very important. When you look at it, we got Offutt, we got the schools, we got the city. Those are our major employers, and I think that we need to constantly be working that all together, and I believe that my connections with these different groups is a very important part of being a city councilman.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson.
And connections are very important, but we have to utilize those connections. If we're not, then businesses aren't coming here. I've talked with the Chamber of Commerce on several occasions, and right now I've been advised that the council does not work hand in hand with the Chamber of Commerce, and I believe that is something that we have to overcome. We have to start working with them to bring business to Bellevue. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 3 will begin with Mr. Stinson. All cities are facing fiscal challenges. How would you address budget concerns, including funding for public safety? You have 2 minutes.
The primary role of government is the safety of our citizens and to encourage an environment for strong business growth. We must reaffirm our priorities and review the city's budget line item by line item in order to judiciously target all tax dollars towards these priorities. We need to increase our tax base to help fund our fire department. This can be done by looking at annexation into the south area where there are quite a few housing areas out there, and also by working with the Chamber of Commerce to bring the new business to Bellevue. If we get business here, we do some annexation, our tax base is going to go up. Our citizens deserve to live in a city that is safe and dynamic. My longtime experience as a Bellevue police officer and volunteer fireman means I am ready to lead on day one regarding safety for Bellevue. Thank you.
Mr. Hanson.
All right, thank you. Question number 3 is a real difficult one. As you know, we've had our challenges with the fire department recently. The fire department is a very difficult thing to grow because our police department's been there for a long time, but to try to grow a fire department from an all-volunteer force to make it into a full-time force is very difficult. How many officers do we hire each year? We've had some SAFER grants that have been out there which expire. Now we have to go ahead and fill those in. It's a very difficult thing, and if you were watching the TV or watching the news, I mean, it's a very difficult thing. I was the person that made the motion to go ahead and at least allocate approximately $760,000 that will kind of keep us going through this next year, but it's not the solution. We have to look at a long-term way to finance that, to make that fire department become a full department in the city. People have talked about a restaurant tax. Our council can go in and probably pass that and get $750,000 or $60,000, but that's not a long-term fix either. Maybe more of a qualified thing would maybe a restaurant tax that would go to the vote of the people. But the key to that is to have everybody get out and promote that as a public safety way to go ahead and finance that. We have to look at other things. Our finance director has constantly said that our pie is only so big. Everybody would like to have great roads, great recreation, a wonderful fire department, a great police department, and great schools. There's only so much money there, and so we have to figure out a way to actually get that to happen. And those are the challenges coming up, I think, in the next 4 years of how do we fund that. And that's not only the police and the fire, but that's all kinds of infrastructure and recreation. Thanks.
Thank you. 1 minute, Mr. Stinson.
Problem is, we don't have 4 years in which to come up with a plan for that. We have 1 year. We put a Band-Aid on the solution this year by taking $760,000 out of the general fund. We had 2 years that grant was in place for $2 million in which to come up with a revenue source to take it over once the grant ran out. We failed to do that, so we were in a position where we were going to have to cut firefighters, and that's unacceptable. It's unsafe. So we actually need to have some sort of revenue in place by this next year. Otherwise, we're just taking the Band-Aid off and we're going to have to put it right back on. And that's just unacceptable. We need a revenue source now. Thank you.
1 minute, Mr. Hanson.
I don't disagree with that. That was like a Band-Aid fix on this. We need to look at a continued source. Our best way to get a great source is to have more people that are here, that are more, the pie gets bigger when you're starting, with more development. How does development happen? First of all, residential is number one, followed by commercial is number two. You can't really build the commercial if you don't have the residential. There are approximately 1,548 lots developable now out at 48th and Capehart Road with 4 different subdivisions in, and I understand the sales are doing pretty well out there, and those are $300,000 to $400,000 homes. There's a Bellevue Schools, have an elementary site right out there on 48th Street. I think that's the way to do it. Kind of residential followed by commercial, that basically adds more revenue.
Thank you. Our fourth question will begin with you, Mr. Hanson. If you were able to accomplish one thing in your elected term, what would that be and why?
That's really hard too, because there's so many things that we need to really do. I think a lot of it is to have to capitalize on our strengths here in Bellevue. Our strengths are, we've got great park system. American Heroes Park is going to turn into a fantastic park down there. If you haven't been down there, it's great. And they're working on the trails and the fishing and things like that. We have access to downtown Omaha, which if you ever go out west Omaha, and believe me, I have, out to 180th and on the interstate out there, every single morning there's a car wreck there or something and you can't hardly get anywhere. Our access is great to the airport. It's great for the people that work downtown. These are the strengths that we need to promote. I always thought there should be a sign there, probably about 4:30 or 5 on a Friday, a big billboard that's on the interstate going west that if you lived in Bellevue, you'd be home by now, because a lot of these people are stuck out there in that traffic. And believe me, I have been out there too. We have a low crime rate. We have great schools. We have to just strive to have other partnerships, maybe private, public partnerships that perhaps we can share resources and things like that. And I believe that that's happening. One of the things I'm excited about is a new sewer fall line, which the cities have contributed in. I believe Papillion, Bellevue, Gretna, all of them have contributed. That's going to open that whole southern corridor, which that's why there's no development down there. There's no sewer. And so that's a very positive thing that the cities have all jumped on, and hopefully that's going to bring all kinds of folks that might want to live in this southern part of our town, southwestern.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson.
Economic development is what we need here. We are the 3rd largest city in the state Yet we have citizens going to Papillion, La Vista, and Omaha to shop. We need to work with the Chamber of Commerce and not against them to bring the businesses to Bellevue. That will keep our citizens in Bellevue to spend their money. We also need to promote the businesses we already have to help bring business to them. I grew up in this city. I can remember not having to leave Bellevue to shop. We need to bring that pride back to Bellevue, bring business here, keep our money in Bellevue, and that will help our economic development much better and give people a place to stay here. I talk to people when I'm going out door to door, and they don't want to leave Bellevue to go shopping. They want it right here in Bellevue so that they can just go down to Cornhusker and shop or any place like that. But their biggest complaint is the fact that they have to leave the city to do any shopping at all. And we need to stop that. We need to get business here so we can keep our money in Bellevue and keep our people here too. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute, Mr. Hanson.
I don't disagree with that. I think one of the things that we really need to focus on, though, is what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are. I don't believe we're going to be a Shadow Lake or a Village Point. I just don't see the land that's available or the infrastructure that's there. So we need to focus on the fact that it's a great place to live, and the expense of the cost of things that we have here compared to other parts, including taxes. When you look at some of the areas, we have some great possibilities of things to work on with our strengths, and not necessarily say we're going to be a retail superpower, because I just don't see it.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson.
That's where we need to put our vision in, is out further out. We could have been a Shadow Lake. Shadow Lake was supposed to go on Chandler Road, and we lost that. We lost Warner Park out to Papillion. Every business that wants to come here, we end up losing somehow, and we need to stop that. We need to let businesses know that we are open, and we want them here, and we need to work towards getting them here and not letting them slip away to Papillion and La Vista. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question begins with Mr. Stinson. We would like to get your opinion on the funding and prioritizing and the development of the Highway 34 corridor. How do you envision this process, and how do you achieve this goal?
4 years ago, the citizens voted to put away $750,000 a year to help fund the infrastructure in this area. There should be $3 million sitting in a fund right now to help put that infrastructure in. But the city dropped the ball on this, and we only have $750,000 in this fund that they put in this year. So now again, we need to go through the budget line item by line item to see how to fund this. If we are to get businesses or industries in this area, we need to get the infrastructure put in. Increasing the city's tax base needs to be a priority, or we're not going to be able to do any of this. So we have got to get our tax base up there so that we can start funding, because, like I said, there should have been $3 million already in this fund to put the infrastructure in, and we have failed to do that over the last 4 years as the people voted 4 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson.
I don't disagree with that. 4 years ago, I think when LB 840 was passed, we could all allocate $750,000 a year that would be dedicated for economic development, mainly on that Highway 34 corridor. I believe it was not funded the first year, then it was 250, and the last year it was 250, and this year I was the one that made the motion to go ahead and allocate that $750,000. And that was really at the recommendation, again, of our planning committee that are looking ahead. The budget that was presented to us didn't have that in there. They had $250,000. And I know, again, we go to that thing where the pie is only so big, and what can you do with it? But again, I believe that was very supportive by the chamber, I know by the Bellevue Chamber, to allocate those dollars there. Right now, I think that fund holds about $1.725 million, which it should be. I don't disagree, it should be $3 million. But there's, again, the pie is only so big. We were able to find that $750,000 through our finance director, and I'm the one that made the motion to go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson, 1 minute.
Well, I guess I don't remember the motion by Mr. Hanson to do that. I would have to look back through the minutes to see that. It's just unacceptable when the people vote. We are put into office to represent you, and it was the people's wishes that we have this money put away, and it was failed to do. In my opinion, the city has let down the voters on what they voted for, what they wanted, and there should have been a revenue source made to get this money into this fund, which they failed to do. Thank you.
Mr. Hanson, 1 minute.
And again, I can't emphasize the amount of time and effort over my career in real estate dedicated to commercial and or economic development. Personally, I sold Ashford Hollow, which is a subdivision in Twin Creek, which is where Benchmark is, and I don't know how many homes are there. It's like, I think it was 60 or 70 acres. Where Sac Federal Credit Union is, I sold that ground to Sac Federal. Where Walgreens is, that used to be Northwest Fabric. I was part of the team. Part of my company was part of that group that ended that. Cape Art Road recently sold 8.6 acres there, which has 93 apartments going in, and working on some other ideas too. So I've been definitely involved with economic development, not just working with groups, but also personally.
Thank you. Our final question, plus we have a couple follow-ups, plus we have some questions from the audience too. This one is, we'll start with you, Mr. Hanson. What do you intend to do to impact the business environment within our community to help stimulate growth?
Okay, and again, we've kind of covered a lot of this, but one of the things that I think we have here a great attraction is the fact that, you know, our cost of rent, that is commercial property, is well below what you'd find out in, say, Elkhart or 180th Street or in Gretna and some of those areas. Our access to, the new Highway 34 is going to be great. I think that one of the things that's going to happen is that when you look at that corridor coming over there, if you're ever down there, you'll see all these trucks that are coming in from I-29. Instead of going into Omaha, they're coming that way. I look at a lot of possibilities down there if we can get the FEMA map so it's not dedicated as a flood zone. And again, I've worked on that too. I've worked with the NRD and also with our mayor and with John Winkler from the NRD and also with Cassidy Associates in Washington, D.C., looking at the runway. The runway would probably not go there at Offutt, and that's a $100 million runway, unless we all work together, which we did with the different cities in the county, to get the money funded to go ahead and build the dike so it won't flood. So the first thing we got to do is get the dikes built, and then that's going to be very prime property. My vision on that, it could be a great place for manufacturing. It could be a great thing to have container storage. Like the trucks that come over, they could stop there and they could pick them up. They could go to Kansas City. They can head up north, different things like that. There's all kinds of visions that you can do. They have rail down there. Burlington and Union Pacific both go through that area. So there's a lot of possibilities in that corridor.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson.
We need to let the businesses know that we are open for business in Bellevue. We need to actively go after business. We can't just sit on our hands and hope they come to Bellevue. I've said this on other questions. We have to start working hand in hand with the Chamber of Commerce to get these businesses here and stop making it so difficult for business to come to Bellevue. There's more to being on the city council than just showing up every second and fourth Monday and voting. The citizens of Ward 2 need someone that will go out and be a leader for them. And I will be that leader after I'm voted in on November 6th. Thank you.
Mr. Hanson, 1 minute.
Another exciting thing that's going on right now, if you haven't been down Highway 75 and you see a $1 plus $2, $3 billion building going there for Stratcom, what that really means is that building's just about completed now, but the more important part is all the stuff that's going to go into that building. A few years ago, that building represented about 26% of the entire Air Force budget. And you can imagine all these other bases looking around and said, look at that building, what are they doing? Well, it's a war-fighting machine there. That's going to control everything. It means very high caliber people that would be coming in there, and they'll be looking for homes in this area, which, a lot of those 1,500 lots I was talking about are $300,000 to $400,000 houses, and I think that that's going to really help the pie as you look at our revenue.
Mr. Stinson, 1 minute.
Realize we're talking a lot about Offutt Air Force Base, and they are a big help to the Bellevue area. But we need also to bring the businesses outside of Offutt into the Bellevue community. The buildings that are being built on Offutt are not helping the citizens of Bellevue as far as their shopping needs and other needs. So even though that's great and it's going to bring jobs into Offutt, a lot of the Offutt personnel live in other cities and they drive here every day. So it's not really enhancing our residents, people buying homes. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a follow-up question with economic development. Dunkin' Donuts has been mentioned about going in on the corner. Also, Raising Cane's is coming. They're remodeling the old Gordman's building. What about economic development that creates a lot of jobs? How do you bring someone in here that's going to create 100, 125 jobs? And Mr. Stinson, you can go first.
I think if we get the actual businesses to come here, and we're talking industries, if the infrastructure gets put in along Highway 34, you're talking industries coming in there. That's the type of area that they're looking for. Those are going to bring more than 125 jobs to this area. You have to get the infrastructure in down there, though, to be able to accomplish that. If we can get that going and bring in industry, we're going to have jobs coming, businesses that will bring in the jobs here. As far as things like the Raising Cane's and everything, we need to look at the Fort Crook and Cornhusker area. That area has been sitting empty forever, and it's been sold, but the problem with that is the city gave them 10 years in which to develop that land. So they can basically sit empty for 10 years, and then when 9 years is up, 9.5 years, they can decide that they want to sell it. And again, it just sits empty. So we need to start letting people know we're open for business. We need to go after these businesses, not sit here and wait for them to come to us. We need to decide what the city wants, and we need to actively go after these businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you. One of the reasons that you haven't seen a lot of development in the Bellevue area in probably the last 3, 4, 5 years is because of our school boundaries. Our school boundaries were locked in because of the learning community locked all of our boundaries, and we couldn't do it. All the ground that Springfield had, they're low on students, but they had tons and tons of ground. So recently, and I worked on this too with people from the city and from all kinds of areas saying one of the things we need to have growth in Bellevue is we need to get those boundaries taken care of. Well, the last couple of years they were. And so we were allowed to go ahead and negotiate with districts like Springfield, and Papillion's doing the same thing as you look at Shadow Lake and that area that goes south there. They've negotiated that, The developers help pay that. There's a fee that goes with that, and that's why you have 4 or 5 different subdivisions that are coming in. So Mr. Stinson said, right, a lot of those folks were living in Papillion and living in other areas, but now that they've got them in the Bellevue School District, and things like that. So instead of the Springfield School District, you're going to see the homes are going to start going in. Right around the VA home there, if you're looking at, they've got starts going in. You got Falcon Point right on that corner there. Those are villas plus very nice homes out in that area. And I just think that that's one of the keys that we have. Get the folks residential, then you're going to get the commercial. You can't really build a commercial if there aren't too many residential folks around. And when you look at 1,500 homes, just think how many families that is and how that makes our revenue stream a lot better.
Mr. Stinson, you have 1 minute.
Again, we're talking about residential areas. Residential areas are nice, and we have a lot of them out there being built right now. But they're sitting outside our city limits, so they're not really bringing in any tax base to us. So we can build all the homes that we want outside our city. The people have to drive through our city, but we're not making any money off them. So business in Bellevue is what's going to bring the tax base and raise our tax base. And that's what I feel needs to be done. Business in Bellevue, and we can look at annexing these areas with an annexation package, which will help bring our tax base up. But right now, people moving outside of our city is not helping us. Thank you.
Mr. Hanson, 1 minute.
And again, I want to emphasize that residential breeds the commercial. You can't really just say, I think I'll have a commercial shopping center here and whatever and just hope that people will be there. If you look at where the shopping centers have gone and you look at where the commercial has gone is where the people are. And that's the first step. And then the second step is, we as a city can help them with the infrastructure or share with that to help it make it more accessible for them to be able to have it, whether it's retail or manufacturing or service type organizations.
Thank you. Now we'll move to our audience questions. We'll start with you, Mr. Hanson. How important is it to you in helping Bellevue get a new library?
I think that is very important. As you probably read in the paper, they had a study quite a few years ago about a library study. That study really focused on the library that we have right now, the one that's right there by Bellevue East. And then there was some consternation about the fact we're spending more money now on another study, and people said we don't need another study. Well, if you talk to Julie, the head of the library, basically she said this study is really with public input about the fact where should we put a library? Should we put one out west? Should we remodel the one we're in? Should we do all kinds of stuff? And we hopefully will do this in the next within the next year or so with public input. I'm a firm believer no matter what happens, if we go out west, I still think we need for a library to the eastern part too, and not just say, by the way, we're just going to move out of there. If you ever go down there and you look at the use of that library, it is used a lot, and there's a lot of folks that use that library and go in and out of there all the time for all kinds of things. Now, I know that things have changed digitally and all kinds of stuff like that. That was what the first study was about. The second one is about what are the needs of Bellevue and where should we go from there.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson.
Definitely think we need to look into the library situation, but I think we can do it more cost effective. We are wasting a lot of money on these surveys and these groups that are getting together. We have the knowledge of people working for the city. We can form these groups within our city and have them look into where the best location is. We don't need to pay $115,000 to have a group tell us where we need to build a new library when the people that know best are the directors of the library and the people that work here for the city. They know where the open land is. They know where it's going to be the best. So we didn't need to spend $115,000 to be told this. I think the best thing to do with the library, we have a lot of land by the library where it is now. We need to look at what we need to do to modernize that library, and we can build onto it right there. and then put a satellite library out west with computers and other things that people are going to need so that it will be closer to them. And that way, we not only affect the library. If you take a look at where the library is right now, you have Bellevue East, Bellevue West not too far, Logan, Mission Middle School. Those are the kids that are using the library the most right now anyways, and it's right almost in the middle of those schools so that they have easy access to get to that library. So I would hate to see that we move that library out of the eastern part. We need to go ahead and modernize that library, add on to it, and then put a satellite library out into the west where we think the best location for that would be.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. One of the things I've thought about, and I worked on this actually a little bit when I was on the school board, is that some partnerships. If you look at La Vista has a partnership with the library along with Metropolitan College University, and that was a combination of using that and another partnership. Instead of having just the city of La Vista do it on their own or city of Bellevue, there might be a partnership. One of the things that's happening, and again with the base, is that the base has closed their pools, they've closed their library, and a lot of the bases are doing outreach programs where they can actually will give money to the citizens of Bellevue or to their airmen so they can use the library and get more use that way too. So it needs to be both places, you know. I just think we need to, I think that study is very important actually.
Mr. Stinson?
The study is very important, but I think we can use our own personnel. We have some very intelligent people that work for this city, and I think we can use their knowledge to know where to build these libraries without spending the money, taxpayers' money, to figure this out. We employ these people now, so we're already paying them a wage. Let's use their abilities a little bit more effective, and instead of paying companies $115,000 to come in and tell us where we need to build them. Thank you.
Thank you. I really wanted to avoid putting these on, but Ward 2, and we'll start with you, Mr. Stinson. Ward 2 has a tremendous deer problem, posing both a safety and environmental problem. How might you tackle this issue?
I'm not for sure there is a great answer to that. There's no way we can control the deer where they're going to roam at night. I personally live over by McCann Ball Field, and the last 2 mornings I've come out in my yard and there's deer around that area. It's a hard situation. You hate to see people go in and start shooting the deer and things. I don't think that really is going to solve the problem. There's more deer around here than anything. I really don't know that there's a great answer on what to do with the deer population. It's human, you know, it's just animal life, and when you live in an area where there's wooded areas and things like that, you're going to have animals. Anymore, I seen on the social media site the other day where there were some coyotes over by the Harvell Drive in the Mason Park area. You know, it's animal life. There's just not a whole lot that we can do about trying to solve it.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes, you know, a few years ago, it looked like the deer population was going down. I live in a wooded area there right off of Bellevue Boulevard, and this year I've seen more deer than I've seen for quite a few years. I do know that they allow hunting, and they hunt on my property with a bow. And that probably maybe helps with that population a little bit. But this most recently, there's just more and more deer. You know, what is the answer? I'm not sure. One of the answers, it isn't, and that's where years ago we used to, you know, people had little salt licks and tried to attract the deer. Hopefully, they're not doing that. Even worse than that, getting bigger and more, is turkeys. We get turkeys everywhere. And the turkeys and the deer, and you know, it's just like crazy. But you know, I'm not sure. That might be something we could talk with our friends at Fontenelle Forest about, and talk to them about what they do in these areas where you have a lot of you know, that happening.
That was way too easy, and I won't go there, that Bellevue has too many turkeys.
You work for the
Miss-
paper?
Mr. Stinson, you get another minute.
For sure, exactly what I can add to what I've said. It is a problem, and you see them all over the place. They're up on the boulevard, mostly and like I said, I live by McCann Ball Field. It's a problem, but I'm not really 100% sure. Maybe we can get with our game and parks and see what they would recommend doing. Other than that, I would leave it up to officials that deal more with the wildlife than I think it being a city council issue. I think we need to work more with the Game and Parks Commission and see what they recommend doing.
Mr. Hanson, you get the last minute on this.
I just say, oh dear, that's it.
We'll start with you for this one, Mr. Hanson. What were your thoughts when you heard citizens from the advocacy group Bellevue Deserves Better speak at the city council meeting last week?
I'm sorry.
The question is, what were your thoughts when you heard citizens from the advocacy group Bellevue Deserves Better speak at the city council meeting last week?
Well, I actually didn't know what to think. You know, when we're in the position where we are, and we hire, at the recommendation of the mayor, we approve the city administrator. The city administrator is the one that hires the police chief. And I believe the advocacy group was, not really in favor of the police chief being reinstated. This is what I gathered quite vividly. I would have to say that during this whole time, I can't believe, and since September a year ago, asking the administration, what's the status of the investigation? What's the status of the investigation? And they just said, it's ongoing and we don't have any status. Well, unbeknownst to us, and again, it is the prerogative of the city administrator to reinstate, based on the findings of the Sarpy County Sheriff's Department, to reinstate the chief. I saw a press release on it, and I saw the article on it. That is not really something in the code where the council has a need to say so. He or she can do that. Unusual, like in the school side, if we had that happen, it would come before our school board and there would be a hearing, and whether to uphold whatever, if they were going to try to fire somebody or hire somebody. It's a whole different code though, and under our code, according to our attorneys, it is the prerogative of the city administrator to reinstate and or hire that person. We, on the other hand, are the one that hires the city administrator. That is recommended by the mayor, and then I believe the city administrator also hires the clerk and probably the attorneys that have to be approved by us as a city council.
Mr. Stinson.
I truly think that the city council actually, their hands were tied on this. They were not given any information about this case whatsoever. So city councils, to me, this was not an issue that they were able to concern themselves with. I think there's a lot of evidence out there. If you've been listening to social media and everything, there's so much out there anymore on this. The tapes are out there, the audio tapes that come out there. What I would like to see done, I'm not for sure there was an adequate investigation into this by the city administrator. I had a meeting with the city administrator the night that they reinstated the chief. Basically, he actually called the meeting. He called me and wanted me to come in and talk to him. The only thing he told me was that the complaints was unfounded. He gave me absolutely no reasons why these complaints were unfounded, just that they were. I would like to see an independent investigator be brought in to reinvestigate this and actually do an investigation out other than our city, just like they did on the other case that came before the city. And that way we can get down to it and find out whether there was any wrongdoing by our chief and what needs to be taken place. Thank you.
Mr. Hanson, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. And You know, I'd echo that frustration that we had. You know, I'm assuming that this investigation would have lasted like a month, maybe two, but not a year. And going on, and that's a great deal of dollars to have expended, you know, for paid leave. And again, I'm not sure, we were not privy to any of the findings of the investigation, other than the fact that was said to us that was within the purview of that chief to go ahead and do whatever happened. And he was reinstated, that was it. And I don't believe any of the members of the city council, we didn't really have any say-so on that. We were always told it's a personnel matter, and we can't really talk about it.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson, 1 minute.
Investigation has cost the city a lot of money, over $700,000 in attorney fees, just in this case alone. Let alone we paid for somebody to stay at home for 1 year in the amount of $120,000. So this whole case has cost the city almost $1 million. And that's just unacceptable. It should not have went this long. And to just say it's a personnel matter and not come forward and let the people know why this was just a personnel matter and what your reasoning was for reinstating the chief with all the other evidence that is out there right now, I think is just unacceptable. And I truly think we need an independent investigation in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this will be the last question because we're running out of time, and we'll start with you, Mr. Stinson. Are you in favor of a new city administrator and a full-time city-employed city attorney?
As far as the city attorney, yes. As I stated, on this chief's case alone, we spent over $700,000 in attorney fees. That is just unreal, in my opinion, and that's just this case. So our attorney fees are going over probably $1 million this year alone. You can go out and hire yourself a city attorney for roughly $120,000, $140,000 in there somewhere, depending on, we'd have to look at what cities our size are doing. Then that city attorney, everything that he does would be in the scope of his employment contract. To just allow somebody to go out there and charge us $200 an hour for working on cases, it's, as you can see with just the chief case, it's absolutely ridiculous the amount that we're paying. That money right there alone would have paid our fire department, and we would have had to take $760,000 out of a general fund. We would have had the money there. So yes, I'm totally for a full-time city attorney. I'm also the city administrator. I do think that city administrator needs to be replaced. I think the bickering that goes on between him and the council on meeting nights is the most embarrassing thing I've seen happen to this city. And so I'm not for retaining the current city administrator. I would like to see a new city administrator brought in. Thank you.
Mr. Hanson.
Thank you. I have talked with some other cities that have their own in-house attorneys, and sometimes that doesn't work out real well either, because all of a sudden then you have retirement, you have the benefits, then that person needs a secretary, then they need a PA, then they need this person. Pretty soon you have a bureaucracy set up within the city of looking at all this stuff. I think it's very important that we need to look at that, though. I think that would be something to really look at based on year-to-year basis. I know over this last few years, there's been so many different issues, personnel issues, all kinds of them, that have taken a good toll on all of this costing with the attorney. As far as the city manager, you know, I can't really. He was hired with the recommendation of the mayor with a unanimous vote on our council. I think that he knows his stuff. I can't speak to the bickering. I'm not one of the ones that are bickering, but You know, I don't know. We need to take a look at, I guess, all of that and probably analyze between hiring a full-time attorney and also having an outside counsel.
Mr. Stinson, you have 1 minute.
I think there's the wasteful spending that we do in the city has got to come to a stop, and one of those is just the amount that the city attorney are charging us. I fully believe that having our own city attorney and have one, when we're doing the hiring process, we can find one that's versed in many different areas. If we don't have anything that needs legal action, there's plenty of city ordinances to go through that need gone over to make it easier for businesses to come to Bellevue. So I just think cost-saving wise, having our own city attorney makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Hanson, 1 minute.
Again, like I said, that would be something to take a look at the difference in the cost. You know, I can't speak specifically to, I don't know that all those fees are like $200 and some an hour. I know that the firm hires some of the younger attorneys that are in there that might be doing some of the boilerplate things, maybe the ordinances and things like that. But I think we need to, you know, as something definitely to explore, but to just jump in and say, let's get rid of the attorney because it's too high and let's go this way. I think we need to really take a hard look at it.
Thank you. Well, we've reached the point now for our closing statements, and you each have 2 minutes, and we'll start with you, Mr. Hanson.
All right, thank you, Ron. First of all, thank you all for coming. This is something, I've never really done this before. I just think that I'm a positive person. I'm not a micromanager. I'm a policy type guy. I am a positive person about Bellevue, and there's a lot of people that get up and say, I don't like Bellevue anymore. It's not the place I want to live. I just can't say that. And neither can my family. I mean, my whole family is raised here, and they went to great schools. They got great education. We got, like I said, good public safety. We have all kinds of things. We have a very low crime rate. It's just a great place to live. And I think we all need to just really focus on that and not just say, oh, by the way, let's throw all the guys that are on the city council out and get new guys. Because I've been there before, and what happens is once you get there, there's going to be a group that says, let's throw those guys out and get new guys. And it happens on and on and on. So I'm trying the best I can. I'm a positive guy. I will work with the chamber. I have worked with the chamber. I've also worked with the Omaha Chamber, which I think is important too, because they cover the entire metro area. And I think that things that we can do, bring economic development here, I'm all for that, and I'll do my very best. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson, 2 minutes.
Okay. I believe I listen to social media comments quite a bit. I think that a city council person needs to represent their ward. They need to get out, meet the people in their ward, and actually talk to them throughout your years and let them know what's going on in their ward. There's been a social media we brought up, the Bellevue Deserves Better. I've been following that, and there was a lady that asked if there was any other thing that they could talk about on there besides just the police chief. And somebody asked what that was about, and they said the city council. So I want to read just a couple things here that came from that conversation. They asked what ward she lived in. She said she's in Ward 2 with John Hanson, but Bob Stinson is running this year. I have reached out to Hanson about the concerns that we have in our neighborhood and didn't get very far. So disappointing. Says, I'm not surprised Hanson, this is a comment back, I'm not surprised Hanson wasn't helpful. He seldom speaks up during council meetings, and to the best of my memory, he has never presented an item to the council meeting agendas. He seldom even offers a motion, though he will second other motions. I've attended most of the council meetings for several years. The person that originally responded, I'm just glad I'm finding this all out before voting. I was very disappointed with the response and care, lack of, for our neighbors' concerns. So you have to get out and meet these people. These people have real concerns, and we need to get with our people in our ward and find out what those are and work hand in hand with them. if something's coming up, we need to let them know what's coming up so that they can vote. If they have concerns in their neighborhood like this lady does, I'm actually meeting with her at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning to listen to some of her concerns, and also to a neighborhood area that we'll meet on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you both for coming tonight. I want to thank you both for running for office and trying to put yourself out there, actually putting yourself out there to the public. And I want to wish you both good luck in this election. I want to turn the podium back over to Jim Risto.
It's going to take about a 5-minute quick reset, and then we'll have our mayoral candidates up here, so stand by. Welcome back, everybody. For those of you that weren't here for the first part, we'll just kind of relay the ground rules here. So going with our mayoral candidates, Rusty Hike and Dave Weiss. I think we've got the draw in place of who will start first, and Mr. Petak will handle that. But the format, again, will include a 3-minute opening from each of the candidates, then a question and answer session where each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question. With exception to question 2, we're going to expand that to 3 since it's a little bit longer of a response. And then each candidate will have a 1-minute follow-up. We will take audience questions, however, we don't take those direct. So where's Faith at? I lost Faith. We will have one of our staff members will be circling the room with pen and paper for you to submit your questions. You submit those, and if we've time permitting, we'll take as many questions as we can for each of the candidates, going with the same rules that we have with the 2-minute and a 1-minute follow-up. Also want to remind everybody, we did stream this live on social media. Apparently our sound is not that great because we're not too close to the stadium, or to the stadium. I'm still hooked on football here. But this will be on Channel 17 and YouTube, and of course the Bellevue Leader will have a response to this too afterwards. So again, I'd like to welcome our candidates, and then welcome Ron Petak, the executive editor from the Bellevue Leader, as our host for the forum tonight. So, Ron?
Thank you, Jim. Again, I'd like to welcome our mayoral candidates, Rusty Hike and Dave Weiss. You can applaud for them. Just one other note here that as the moderator, I do reserve the right to ask candidates for clarification and keep things on schedule. So just letting you know that. So let's begin with our opening statements, and we'll start with Mr. Hike.
My name's Rusty Hike. First of all, I want to start by thanking the Bellevue Leader and the Bellevue Chamber for putting on this forum. These are very important so people can understand who they're voting for. Speaking of voting, tomorrow the early ballots come out, so voting does start tomorrow. There was, I believe, 1,500 requests over the weekend, so there's 1,500 people voting this week. So, my name is Rusty Hike. I've been a resident of Bellevue for 56 years, my entire life. I'm a 4th generation resident from the area. My family owns property that I own currently, and since 1913. So we have property that we've owned in the same family for over 100 years. 7 different members of my family have lived in that property, actually. I've been a real estate broker since 1982. I own Hike Real Estate. We have 5 offices and 26 agents. We manage property and over 400 properties. I sell commercial real estate and residential as well. My wife, Joanna, in the audience, she's been teaching. We've been married for 21 years. She's been teaching in the Bellevue Public Schools for 24 years. I have 3 children. They've all been through the Bellevue Public Schools. My last one is in 9th grade at Bellevue East. I been asked a lot why why I want to run for mayor, and, you know, there's no real answer when you want to put yourself out there for public office, but it is in every fiber of my body that I want to take this job on and do a good job for Bellevue. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss.
My name is Dave Weiss, and I'm running for mayor for Bellevue. I was employed with Omaha Public Power District since 1981. I will retire December 1st of this year. Looking forward to it. I've been in the Bellevue area since I was 10 years old. I lived at the bottom of Bryan High School. We moved there when I was 10 years old. When I moved away and went and served in the Marine Corps for 4 years, we moved back to Bellevue. I was in the Marine Corps from 1976 to 1980, and I was a military policeman. I served as a city council member from 1992 to 2008. I had 16 years on the Bellevue City Council for Ward 5. Public safety is my #1 priority, always and will be. It was so important to me that I spent 30 years on the Bellevue Volunteer Fire Department, answering rescue and fire calls, serving offices as lieutenant and a captain, and I also was on the Board of Trustees for 25 years. I have a master's degree in public administration from University of Nebraska at Omaha, which is ranked 2nd in the country in public administration. I have a bachelor's of art from Bellevue College, so that goes back a way. When Bellevue College said they turned to a university, they asked me if I wanted a new paper with Bellevue University. I'm proud to have served and learned in the Bellevue College. I graduated from another Bellevue high school, Daniel J. Gross. My wife graduated in 77, me in 76, and my 3 children, Sarah, Lisa, and Brian, also graduated from Gross High School. I've been married to 40 years to Ann. Ann is a registered nurse and spent 20 years in coronary intensive care, and currently is at Gateway School with Omaha Public School as a registered nurse. My oldest daughter is a nurse anesthetist. My daughter Lisa works for Millard Public Schools as a healthcare professional, and my son is in the apprenticeship program for Miller. My priority in being the mayor of Bellevue is Bellevue itself. I will be retired, like I said, in December, and I will be able to give that office my full attention. I want to have an open door policy and be available to the citizens and employees of Bellevue. My background in customer service and past experience in the Bellevue City Council as a councilman for 16 years will help me with the solid leadership role needed in the mayor's position. So along with the council and myself, we can serve Bellevue to the best. I'll be able to work together and make Bellevue a great city to live, work, and play in.
Thank you. Well, let's begin. We'll start question number 1, and we'll start with you, Mr. Hike. Please explain your vision for the future of Bellevue and your role in achieving that vision.
My vision's a written vision. It's very short. It's to organize and set a clear direction for the city of Bellevue to reach economic success and safety for our citizens. By doing that, we've got a few things to get around. First of all, we're going to start by clearing up some lingering issues. We've got issues with the police department and between the police department and the administration. We've got to fund our fire department, find some revenue for that. We need respect among the administration and the city council. We got to bring them all together to meet our common goal. Build and restructure an administration team that will be welcoming for development. I think we've fallen short on that. We need to roll out the red carpet for new development in town. All city representatives and employees will be accountable for their jobs. I strongly believe that a fair day's work is worth a fair day's wage, and we will reach that success.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, you have 2 minutes.
My role as mayor in Bellevue will be a catalyst that retains, recruits, and support Bellevue's businesses and citizens. I hope that significant positive changes are on the way that we work with our customers. This is a customer service industry. Sitting as mayor and with the help from the city council and employees, I hope we can assist businesses and people by helping individuals or groups in ways that they want to come back because it was made so easy. I no longer want to hear the fact that you can't do that. Rather, how can I help you get that project or problem solved? My vision is one of accomplishment and satisfaction by reaching that goal that was planned for the community.
Thank you. 1 minute, Mr. Hike.
We do need to roll out that red carpet, and we need to do whatever it takes to get projects together. We've fallen short on that, and when you walk into City Hall, you need to feel welcome and figure out how to get that project done. Too many times, and I've heard over and over, that Bellevue is very hard to work with, and they just walk right back out the door. So to get to the vision I spoke about, we have to break down that barrier and make it more inviting.
Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
Barriers are always something that we have to overcome. I think when you have good customer service and you care about that individual that comes before you and you truly listen to them, you can accomplish a lot. The red carpet doesn't need to be rolled up. Everyone should be treated fair and the same in a public setting. My goal is that everyone is treated with respect and fair, and nothing is done in favor of someone or a project.
Thank you. We'll move on to our 3-minute question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Weiss. Name the 3 most important issues that you believe need to be addressed in your first year as mayor, and briefly describe what your role would be in addressing each of those items. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ron. Public safety, I said in the first, was absolutely the top priority for me. In the past 12 months, the police and fire have been on the headlines. As a mayor, I will sit down with the staff and with the help of the city council, address these issues that are preventing the departments from accomplishing their mission statement. I will prioritize the needs and assess and look at for future funds and funding by looking at the budgetary documents so we can accomplish this mission. My experience, education gives me the ability not to have all the answers, but it gives me the ability to find that information and know where to go. At this point in time, for me, I can't rely on fragmented information and reports. I am a hands-on person, and since I'm retired, I will have the time to work towards these obligations, and I will help that there's no distraction. I have the time, talent, and knowledge to address this issue. My second one is the city administrator. Mr. Manchmalley will not be with us in 4 years. He is looking forward to his retirement with friends. I have talked with him, and hopefully I'll be able to keep him on till we find a replacement for him. Joe is the key role of the city. He's the CEO. His experience and knowledge is equal to no other. I hope to retain for Joe, like I said, for a period of time so we can hire another administration. Another option we have is when we vet our candidates, the University of Nebraska, as I mentioned, is number 2 in the country for public administration. I know P.J. Reed, who was the past chair, and Paul Landau, who is the current chair. Hopefully they can help us to vet. Finally, planning. And not the planning that you look at with roads and projects going on. As the mayor, you're involved in many different aspects of the metropolitan area. 25 years ago, who would believe that we have to ship our trash to David City? We have 4 fire stations. We have 524 employees. We have 5 wards that demand the same services throughout the city. If elected mayor, I would sit on multiple boards in the metro area that affects Bellevue and the surrounding areas. This includes projects like solid waste, wastewater, sewers, gas, water, power. They all come with funded and non-funded mandates. Sarpy County has a vision group called 2050, which you're looking at into the future. This is where a group of city officials and county officials sit together and plan for the future.
Mr. Weiss,
Thank
your
you.
time's up.
Thank
Thank you.
I didn't see that.
Mr. Hike, 3 minutes.
3 most important things. Number 1 is getting us out of the tabloids and into the business section. It is embarrassing. I think Mr. Stinson said that. So we have to show a little more respect and get along for the common goal. So that's probably number 1. I need to connect as a mayor with the council and respect they're put in there by the people. I need to respect their thoughts, and we need to pull things together to move forward. Also need to make sure that the administration is providing information to the council members instead of dropping it on their lap, hours before the meeting. That's just uncalled for and should never happen. I will study when I get in there. One of the first goals there, I will study the investigations between on the police chief, and I will I'll make tough decisions. I know there's a lot of problems between the two, the police union and the police chief. I know there's reason for that, and I'll resolve those differences. If I can't, we'll to bring the department together. We'll make the right changes or whatever we have to do. But I want to get in there and I want to read that investigation and see what's been hidden for a year and why it's cost us so much money. The police need to work in a department that they can trust, though. That's uncalled for as well. Restructuring of the administration. I've already talked with Joe Mangiamelli, great guy. He knows the city business inside and out, but he is not my administrator, and I want to take the city in a whole new direction. I want to brand the city in a whole new way, and I need a good 4 years out of my next person, and hopefully another 4 after that. I've also talked with Mr. Sullivan about council, and I will have to be talked out of not having an in-house council. We're going to set up another meeting, but it's not so much the expense of it, and I don't know that it's any cheaper, but I really feel that Bellevue needs to have somebody working day in and day out on their issues and their contracts and representing solely us. So right now I'm leaning towards a in-house council, and again, no disrespect to Mr. Sullivan's office, and we've talked about it already. Third, 36th Street is long overdue for widening and improvements. We have all that growth going on out in southwest Bellevue, a lot of houses. You can't get to Bellevue from there. 36th Street's just been a mess for years, and that finally needs to get done. So that'll be another big project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, you have 1 minute.
In the first year of being the mayor of a city like Bellevue, you have to become familiar with different staff members, council members, and other people from the Sarpy County area. My commitment will be to spend the time to ensure that I get my message across that I am an open-minded person. I do not possess tunnel vision where I go to the light. I can be etched to look at the different side, the different areas. I hope that my experience will send me in a positive position to move Bellevue into the future and be a great city.
Thank you. Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
There is no tunnel vision. My dad told me when I started driving, he said 80% of your attention belongs 80% of your attention belongs looking down the road. We're not doing that. We need to do that. We need to know where we're going, and we've got ideas, and we will make things happen. There's a lot to be done. Those 3 issues I talked about are just a start. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we're back to 2 minutes, and this will be for you, Mr. Hike. Based solely on the economic development that has taken place in our surrounding communities over the last several years, compared to the economic development of Bellevue, what do you see as the biggest roadblock that has impacted the growth in Bellevue?
It before, but we are not making it easy for an investor to come into town. Again, we need to make it welcoming, help him get his project done, not find ways to make him walk out the door. I believe we can reorganize the planning department and have more of a one-stop shop, somebody that will take control of our economic development, our planning, and that person will be the contact for developers coming in. They can work on our annexation plans, and they will be the person that developer comes back to if there's a problem. They will give them a roadmap when they walk in the door on how you're going to get that project done. We are not developer friendly, and that's a huge part of what I want to bring to the city of Bellevue.
Mr. Weiss, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Ron. In economic development, you have to look at several things: destination, location, and demographics. That is key for economic development. Bellevue has a population base that is the 3rd largest in the state. We have Offutt Air Force Base, the #1 employer in Nebraska, that infuses over $1.6 billion a year. Bellevue's biggest economy is defense. We have a solid retail and service industry. Just look what's happening all over the growth in senior care and the healthcare sector. I believe there are roadblocks that prevent development in areas like the downtown area and the Fort Crook sector. I think that roadblock is that developer that is unwilling to come into those areas and infuse money because the lack of economy and the location. The key to success in economic development is location. That's why important is the 34th Street Court, or the Highway 34 sector. We start developing from that area that moves up to 36th Street. 36th Street, another major area for economic development. The city's going to infuse over $40 million over the next 5 years. And in that 5 years, it's going to sit there and promote economic development. This will continue up to Cornhusker, where in 5 years, we will infuse another $20 million to 6 Lane, all the way from 25th Street down to Fort Crook. And hopefully it moves around the Fort Crook, and heads north and south for economic development.
Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
We need to, with the Highway 34 corridor, for those that don't know, there's about 5,000 acres down there. It's served by 2 railroads, BNSF, Union Pacific, has interstate access, has river transport possibilities. It is a diamond for Bellevue, and we're not doing anything as far as planning with it. The interchange is the metro area's biggest vacant diamond interchange, and there are no plans on it. We need to go out after developers and start bringing in people to develop. You have to go after them. They don't come after you when everybody else is coming to them. Thanks.
Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
Revitalization of downtown has been a buzzword since 1992. I used to work in the OPPD office in downtown. Several banks closed, the shoe stores moved, and commerce left. what has to happen in that area, it has to become deprived. And then a developer is going to come in there and pick up cheap land and develop it. When you talk about a deprived area like downtown, I disagree. You have wonderful businesses down there. Rusty, you have a real estate agency down there. Frank, you have a wonderful jewelry store. There are different shops and fooderies down there that do a great thing. Within a mile of the downtown area, there are drugstores and grocery stores. So the developer has to make a commitment to develop that area.
Thank you. Our fourth question is a two-part question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Weiss. In speaking with business leaders and developers outside of Bellevue, what do you hear their perception is of Bellevue? And as a mayor, how do you improve or enhance that image?
I think this was the hardest question for me to answer because I've always had positive feedback from the people I dealt with the city. Now, of course, they're the doubting Charlies that are out there and the people that just sometimes want to make other people's lives miserable. But if you're asking for what you hear out there, you hear things like red tape, a slow and painful process, and it's complicated. We have to take a customer service approach, one that customer or that developer or that person, we have to make them the most important issue that comes before us. The city needs customer service training that helps employees and supervisors become a customer service-oriented organization. This involves the process of listening to that person, telling that person what you have heard, providing positive feedback, and then try to help them out the best that you can, and then taking ownership of that idea. There's a ladder of accountability, and it can be either powerless or powerful. If you want it to be powerless in the customer service industry, you take things like you're unaware of what's going on. You blame others. You make excuses, or you wait and hope. To make this a powerful customer service organization, what our employees have to do, what the mayor has to do, what the council has to do, is we have to acknowledge reality. We have to take ownership, we have to find solutions, and we fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hike.
I deal with the perceptions. I've been in the real estate business 36 years, and I've represented a lot of different builders, one for probably 12 years straight running. The biggest perception is for those developers and builders, investors, is it's hard to do business in Bellevue. I can give you just an example of that. I represented a builder, one of the largest builders in Omaha, and I was proud to represent him down here in Bellevue through Treguer and Blackhawk, some of the areas, the nicer areas. He inevitably ended up saying, you've got to get out of Bellevue. It's too hard to do business down there. Pretty much made me move to a Papillion office and start working Papillion properties. That's directly related to how we treated them within the city hall. And that's just one example. I hear that over and over from different builders. Anyway, that did not work. I moved out to Papillion for a few months, and I love the community in Bellevue, and I wanted to get back here. Second thing is, there's nothing going on in Bellevue is what I hear. That's crazy. There's a lot of things going on here. We have a lot of things going for us as well. We need to blow our own horn. We need to sell Bellevue. We need to brand it. We need to engage our Bellevue Chamber. We did receive a little help from the city last year, but prior to that, there was, other than help with Riverfest, but that's a community project. I think they should be helping on that. But no money before that. But I wrote down a few places. We've got Lockwood Development, the Lockheed Building, Old Town. I personally have rented 16,000 square feet in the last 6 months. We've got the best restaurants in town. We got the industrial ground we talked about. There's a lot going on in Bellevue.
Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
Again, with this question, I think the most important thing is that as a mayor, how do you improve or enhance our image? And that's a positive feedback to the people we deal with. Becoming a customer service industry unlike no other in the metropolitan area. Address the needs and concerns of our citizens and businesses. Make it a positive experience. I know there's negative out there, but if you use your customer service skills like listening, providing positive feedback, and trying to help fix the problems, it can only improve the area.
Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
Problems with our just our overall attitude towards development, and Mr. Weiss says if there is a problem, we need to fix it, but there is a problem in Bellevue City Administration. And I will address those, and we'll treat each other with respect, and we'll know what our expectations are. And I think we can move rather quickly in a positive direction and get that tax base expanded so we can start paying for our services. Thanks.
Question number 5, and we'll start with you, Mr. Hike, is about public safety funding. Specifically, the fire department has been a topic of concern for several years, and recently the restaurant tax was floated as a solution. What are your thoughts on using a restaurant tax for public safety? And if not in favor, what other options would you propose?
I am not in favor of a restaurant tax to pay for public safety. Public safety should be the first thing you pay for out of your general fund. If you're going to impose a restaurant tax, I would think you would want that to benefit the restaurants. That's just another tax, and we don't need another tax. This problem did not happen yesterday. We went to a full-time fire department, and we knew we had to fund it 4 years ago. We failed on that. There is no funding for it. We haven't brought in additional investment to expand that tax base. We haven't, I don't even know that we've annexed, maybe we've annexed 1 or 2 areas in the last 8 years or so. We need an aggressive annexation plan. The SIDs that are being built are taking care of their own expenses within their subdivision, but once they drive out of that subdivision, they're using our infrastructure, they're using our public safety. We really have to take a strong look at our annexation as well. But new development and annexation packages, create new retail sales, more jobs. It's not a restaurant tax to me. I don't believe in that. Thanks.
Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Ron. Public safety funding. In April of 2010, it was the decision of the city to fund a full-time paid fire department. Currently, we have 49 fire departments, and to fund the fire department fully, we need 75 personnel. Mandated by legislation, cities over 50,000 had to hire a full-time fire chief. When this was done 10 years ago, the fire department's budget was at $1.2 million. This year's budget was set at $9.4 million. $7.4 million of that is for personnel, and $2 million is for needed replacement equipment, fire apparatus. This is an 8-fold increase with no tax increase in the budget. This budget year, it was noted that there was no change in the mill levy and has not been for the last 4 years. Every time the fire department is increased, other departments are suffering. $8 million, think about it. In December of last year, the city administrator told the council that we have to look at different ways to fund the fire department. This was number 1, a restaurant tax or an increase in taxes. As mayor, I will support a restaurant tax. if it is sitting there and put out, if the restaurant tax is set at 2.5%, we could increase that budget by $2.5 million a year. The revenue from the restaurants are approximately $100 million. Another thing, we have not increased the tax levy since 1992, when it was increased from 6.5 to 7%. We could do that. Thank you, I have to stop.
Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
The restaurant tax are thriving in Bellevue, and I visit one every day of the week, I think, probably 7 times a week at least, just whether it's lunch or dinner. I think that's an unfair tax, and it might help drive business away for them instead of bringing it in. I don't buy the tax. I mean, if you have it as a last resort, maybe you could change my mind. But again, you're going to have to come up with a way to draw more business in for restaurants that helps the retail part of the community. We don't need more new taxes. We just need to expand our tax base, and we need to get busy doing what we should have been doing a decade ago.
Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
Thank you. Also, when I was talking about the tax increase of 1992, that was used for general tax relief and funding of the Kennedy Freeway. Now, I believe if we do this, it needs to go to the vote of the people. So I'm not saying that we can't have a voice. It needs to be packaged. Annexation, it's a wonderful tool for the city to increase revenue. The only problem with annexation is when you have a new development that is brought in to the city, it takes approximately 15 to 20 years for the general obligation bonds to get down where it's attractable for the city to annex. And usually it's a break-even venture due to the fact is there's more police, fire, roads to be worked on, and also plowed. Thank you.
This is our 6th question, and then we'll go to some audience questions. And we'll start with you, Mr. Weiss. LB 840 provided the city with the ability to designate funding for economic development in the Highway 34 corridor. Funding the program has not been a priority. How would you address that issue? And what is your vision or plan to develop the Highway 34 corridor?
Thank you. LB 840, I'd like to explain that to you a little bit. It's one of 2 economic development tools in a bucket for the city and the state of Nebraska. The other one is TIF. It actually became law back in September of 1992. It was adopted by May 1st by the city of Bellevue, and it has an ending date of 2040. And we have to have a designated area for this money, which is the Highway 34 sector. It runs from the Missouri River west to 75, from Cunningham Road to Fairview Road south. With this, that money can be used up to $750,000. Just when it was enacted, the first year the city had no action. The second year they put in $250,000. The third year was $750,000, and this year a commitment of $750,000. In that fund right now, it's $1.745695. That's almost $1.8 million. In the next budget of 2021, I will hopefully, with the help of the city council, commit another $750,000. Now we're talking about some money that is equal to the projects, what they have to have the minimum qualifications, which is $2.5 million, and they have to have sales in $2.5 million. We were slow, but I believe the city realizes that is important, and it's important to the chamber, it's important to development. That's where we get our jobs of 125 to 200 people, manufacturing, retail, storage. So I believe 840 is important, and I think the city will support it and it is important to the city for future growth.
Mr. Hike, 2 minutes.
40 is very important to our future in Bellevue, and I helped work on LB 840 at the Chamber, and I am a strong proponent of it, and I think it should be fully funded. I think $750,000 might even be a little bit low, but that's what the number is, and I think we should be funding that. That will be in my budget every year. That's, again, that's looking down the road instead of right in front of where you're going, but you want to see where you're going, and that's going to help us down the road. We have to have, in some of these, we have to have incentives to get corporations to come in. That could be putting infrastructure in, but that pot of money has to be there. It's very important. My plan and vision for the corridor, we talked about it a little bit earlier as far as having the dual rail service and everything, but I think maybe we should start by creating a plan, which I have not seen a plan that the city of Bellevue has for the corridor. We need to figure out who we want to attract. Right now, we're trying to attract somebody that we don't even know who that is. So we have to figure out what we want here. Do we want smokestacks with meat processing? Do we want cold storage? We don't even know what we want, so how are we going to sell that property? I will encourage the stakeholders down there. If you can't sell something that you don't own, other words, you go to jail. I will encourage the stakeholders to put their own group. I think there's about 13 of them together to come up with their terms and their price so that we can actually get to a listing on that property and have something to sell. But that's only after we figure out what we want there, because we do not want to sell it on an idea and then the community doesn't want it. Thanks.
Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
Thank you, Ron. LB 840, what does it do? It sits there and it provides for land purchase, executing options, construction, infrastructure financing, and matching loan funds from the Small Business Administration from the state of Nebraska. What does this do? It creates new jobs. It gives us employment, valuable employment. It attracts a variety of new businesses and new capital improvements. It broadens our tax base and expands our labor market. It's a good bill, and we're fortunate to have it till 1940. I'm sorry, till 2040.
Thank you. Mr. Hike.
There are millions and millions of dollars worth of new tax. It's not really new tax, it's expanded tax base that sit in that area. And if we don't properly plan for that and do it quickly, while the economy's still good, if we blow that area down there, that will be the biggest travesty that Bellevue's ever had. That is, again, that's a diamond, and that's our answer to all of our city services, and not raising our taxes and taxing our residents out of the city. Thanks.
Thank you. You know, I was struck by something each of you said in your opening statements. Mr. Hike, your family has been in Bellevue for more than 100 years, and Mr. Weiss, you said you grew up around Bryan, which was an annexed area not that long ago. And we hear this come up quite a bit about Bellevue, Old Bellevue, New Bellevue, Northwest Bellevue, Southwest Bellevue. And we'll start with you, Mr. Hike. What exactly is Bellevue?
That's one of the things I've discussed at my meetings and my gatherings with different groups, but Bellevue has an identity problem. If you're out in West Omaha and you say, let's go to Bellevue, where is it? I don't know that anybody would agree on the same spot or even be able to come up with a spot. We need connectivity with our streets. We need to get those areas annexed. There are pockets in Northwest Bellevue that are not even annexed. We need to create community. We need to bring everybody in together and start acting like the state's third biggest city.
Mr. Weiss?
What is Bellevue? Bellevue is all of us. Bellevue is very unique. It's the third largest populated city in the state of Nebraska. It's unique in that we are represented by 2 different congressional districts. We actually have 4 different school systems. We have the Bellevue schools, we have the Omaha parochial schools, and we have the Omaha public schools. Recently, the city of Bellevue was in competition with the city of Omaha for the Boys and Girls Club. That was awarded to Bryan High School, and I heard comment that Bellevue lost it. No, Bellevue did not lose that. It went to Ward 5, and it will be very useful for my area, Ward 5. Bellevue is a diverse area where we all want to work, play, and grow in. We have wonderful parks. They do a wonderful job with that. When's the last time someone has complained about snow removal? Our streets, we're not blowing tires out, and there's good planning. I think Bellevue is a wonderful community, and here I am. I'm here, and I will promote Bellevue, and not just Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4, Ward 5. I am going to promote Bellevue. I will visit the schools. I will visit the different churches. I will visit the different organizations. Hopefully, I have a vision to unite Bellevue, and that is what my job is as mayor.
Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
You don't have to sell me on Bellevue. I've got friends and family all over this town and every corner of this town, and I love this area, and I do not like seeing it struggle. I don't like seeing our neighboring cities have economic success and bring jobs and retail sales in while we sit here in a great economy with low interest rates where we could where we could have an aggressive annexation plan. I would imagine the bond rates over the last 8 years have been conducive to refinancing some of those SID debts and putting financial sense into them. We just need better planning, and that's the direction I'll take the city. Thanks.
Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
Again, Bellevue, a concept. All people need to get on board. We need to sit there and look at different organizations and help them bring to Bellevue that'll truly make Bellevue a wonderful city to live in. Service organizations can do volunteer work that will sit there and enhance their personal needs and the community needs. There's different organizations within this city that you can get involved with, and it tells you and shows you the greatness of Bellevue.
Thank you. We have quite a few questions from the audience, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them, so trying to go through here, and some of these that look like they're duplicates, we'll try to get to those so those topics get answered. The first one, and we'll start with you, Mr. Weiss. In Old Town, the sewer system is really outdated, as it is in much of the city. What is your plan to finance its replacement or repairs?
Currently, the city is underway in doing a sewer assessment and needs. Mr. Roberts just brought forth to the council a structured rate increase on how to fund and repair these sewers. Of course, Old Town Bellevue has the worst areas. There's areas up around me that have no sewers. So with good planning, and I believe that the city is looking towards the future to repair and bring the needs of the sewer in line for updating it.
Mr. Hike?
Keeping your budget tight and not wasting money like we have been. It appears to me that the way the sewer rates have gone up, at least the ones I'm paying, we should be getting something out of it. We just agreed to raise that fee again, and that's probably about the only way you're going to fix that. If you're using it, you're going to pay for it. We have issues that'll increase the price, that'll increase the values of your property if you have a good sewer system. There's currently a large project being planned in Old Town that I think will put that on the front burner if the project goes through. So if you use it, you got to pay for it, and we've been paying for it. I hope it's not a whole lot more. Thanks.
1 minute, Mr. Weiss.
Sewers, wastewater, street runoff, all unfunded mandates that was given to us by the federal government. They said we must repair. There's no other way that we can sit there and accomplish it but by increasing the rates for users. If you look at your bills, and I've looked at mine, my water bill and gas bill are less than what I pay in sewer fees. It's a fact. It has to be done. There's an issue out there. It must be addressed, and it must be fixed.
Mr. Hike.
I don't have anything else on sewers. Thanks.
Oh, okay, we'll move on. And Mr. Hike, we'll start with you for this one. It's kind of lengthy. Size-wise, Sarpy County is the smallest county in Nebraska and has 5 cities: Bellevue, Papillion, La Vista, Gretna, and Springfield. Would you support consolidating all law enforcement under one office, that being the Sarpy County Sheriff's Office, with the sheriff as the elected leader of that group? This could potentially save a huge amount of taxpayer dollars by combining administration, training, and other resources while avoiding, hopefully, all of the recent and expensive investigations and controversies. So I guess the question here is, are you in favor of consolidating the police departments?
I think when you're budgeting and when you're looking at everything, everything has to be on the table. I would certainly look at what the numbers are. I think as far as public safety, when it comes to the police, Bellevue is a little bit more unique than some of the other cities in the county. We have a very diverse group of citizens. We have some maybe some safety issues that they don't have to worry about in Papillion or Gretna. So any chance of combining those, they'd have to prove to me that they can give the outstanding service that we are getting right now.
Mr. Weiss.
This is a question for what I talked about a little bit earlier, a holistic look at the entire county. When you have a holistic look, you have a group of individuals from cities and the county that can sit there and look at these issues. There was a wonderful buzzword when I was on the council, and it was double taxation. And it was the issue of why are we paying for Bellevue Police and Sarpy County Sheriff? Why is there different fire districts? If you have to have a vision for the future and you're looking for projects that can combine services, you have to take a look at what is in the future. I'm not saying at this point that I would surrender our police department to the sheriff's department, but if it comes down to the future for managing that type of services in a way that everyone could become whole and no one is harmed, you definitely have to look at it. And I think that's part of the vision of 2040 in Sarpy County.
Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
I think our best service is going to be having it controlled locally. But again, if you can tell me that we can cut $10 million or some number like that out of our budget, you have to look at it. I got a lot of respect for the Sarpy County Sheriff's Department, and I have a ton of respect for the Bellevue Police Department. Again, Bellevue is not like the other cities in Sarpy County, so that's one you have to look at very carefully.
Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
The budget for the police department this year was over $13 million. In a few years, if we have a fully funded fire department, we're going to spend approximately $26 million. With inflation. 5 years down the road, we could look at a $30 million budget for Bellevue. You have to look at our different options. Again, there is no better police force, I believe, in Sarpy County than the Bellevue Police Department. I have the utmost respect, and they do a wonderful job. I see them in my neighborhoods. I see them on the roads. I see them on the highways. I want them out there. They've done a good job. That's it.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Weiss, has to do with sidewalks. We have so many areas in the city without contiguous sidewalks. It is dangerous for our kids and our citizens. What is your proposed solution?
Sidewalks, when I was on the city council, I lost several friends over sidewalks. They were building a house and a sidewalk had to go to nowhere. They wanted waivers. The sidewalk issue has been addressed in the past where they have to sit there and create paving districts. It's not wanted. Is there a safety issue? Yes, there is. At this point, I don't have the answer for that. Again, I think that's something that the staff and the city council, that we could sit down in a session, in a planning session, and look at the sidewalk situations. It's a touchy subject when someone has to build a new house and there's a sidewalk that goes to nowhere. If you build a house now and you will have a sidewalk and there's no way around it, no waivers. That's what the ordinance is. How do you control it? I do not have the answer for that, but hopefully, with the help of the council and staff, we could come up with an answer.
Mr. Hike.
I think one way of taking care of that, there's an ordinance that says anytime you sell a property and there's no sidewalk in it, you have to put that sidewalk in. We're not enforcing that. They're being selective on it. I've sold a lot of houses, and sometimes that comes up, sometimes it doesn't. But had we been enforcing that, then we'd probably have a good number of sidewalks back in our area. If you want families with children and to come to Bellevue and be safe, sidewalks are very important. And if we have to, I think we enforce the ordinance we have. That would take care of a lot of them. And there might be a time when we have to come to a sidewalk district for paving. Thanks.
Mr. Weiss, you have 1 minute.
I think I've spent a lot of time on sidewalks, and I really don't have an answer for it. If it needs addressed and it comes before me, I will address it, and we can have maybe a councilman put it on the agenda so we can discuss it. We can have public work sessions for that, maybe a town hall meeting. I'm open to a town hall meeting. If someone wants to do that, we can bring the community together and communicate the problem or the issue, and we'll bring it back to staff and council.
Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
Another minute worth of talk on sidewalks, but I can tell you, Mr. Weiss said that if a council member wants it on there to put it on the agenda, it just brought my attention to something else that I'll talk about it now, but our administrator right now has the power to let a council member put an item on the agenda. I think that's wrong, and my administration will not allow that, so we will allow the council members to put those items forward. Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll start this one with you, Mr. Hike. American Heroes Park is expanding. What about Hayworth Park?
I just keep driving back down there, but I will, we need to find out why that river keeps flooding. It happened every 15 years it used to. Now, I think we've been underwater 3 times this year alone. So those dams north of us were put in for a reason, and that was flood control. Same reason they're putting in the Papio Creek dams. If those dams start getting controlled by the EPA, I fish up in Lake Sharp, and they only let the water go down. I think it's a total of 8 inches. There can only be a variance of 8 inches. That's not what that dam was built for. So there's an issue there that has to be addressed. They need to lower those dams a little bit so they can hold more water and reduce the flow in the river. And we're not the only one affected by that, but Bellevue has a river, and there are a lot of cities that would love to have a river. It's beautiful, it's majestic. There are things we can do with it, but if it floods 3 times a year, I'm not sure what those things are going to be.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss.
Hayworth Park is designed to do exactly what what is being done to it right now. That is flooding. That river is a navigable river by the Corps of Engineers. You cannot sit there and put restricted dams to protect the park. That park protects cities, houses, and fields. We're lucky to have that. If you go back in history to remember the Bellevue Queen, the restaurant down there, why did that fail down there? It got flooded. It's inconvenient to lose a camping space for the week, for a month, for a summer, for a season. But we have that for flood control. And that's what it's designed to do, is take the water. I'm glad Hayworth Park is there to take the water.
Mr. Hike.
The buffet at the Bellevue Queen is why I'm overweight, so that's probably okay. So used to eat there all the time. We just have to investigate other river towns and see what they've done, and make the best of what we have. But if we have to just keep throwing grass seed down every time the river comes up, so be it. It's beautiful, and it's a great addition to the city of Bellevue, and just a very, very natural thing, and most cities would love to have one. Thanks.
And Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
It's a floodway. If you put a buffer zone up on the Bellevue side, it's not going to happen because the Corps of Engineers is not going to let it happen, because all you're going to do is move the river either across the street or across the river or downstream. It is what it is.
This question has to do with the library. It says we need a new and second library in southwest Bellevue. We still keep our current library where it is. Do you agree? And we'll start with you, Mr. Weiss.
Again, a buzzword, Bellevue Library. My wife sat on the library board for 10 years, and that was an issue the whole time. I went through 3 different elections where everyone wanted to champion it. There's been, we are now on the third study. It's an important study. I went to the library not too long ago to listen to the library director talk about a needs assessment. They had a public forum there, and they gave information out about a city of our size, of close to 53,000 people. We need a library that sits on a footprint of approximately 50,000 square feet. The current library is at 20,100 square feet. It was built in 1975. It was built during the energy crisis of the Carter administration, and it lacks in ventilation, lighting, and energy efficiency. It needs to be, we need to do something. We have a library foundation. That library foundation, I believe, has money to contribute. We have to look at our surrounding areas like Metropolitan Community College, Offutt Air Force, Bellevue University, and partnership in it. The estimated cost for that library right now is going to be at $13 million. Again, It's more money. Where's our tax base? How are we going to raise that money? How are we going to increase taxes? It's needed. It's been well needed, but we have to sit there and make a decision. And again, the council and staff and the community needs to do it. That's why we're having these open work sessions right now. I believe the next one is like around October 25th. Please attend.
Mr. Hike, 2 minutes.
I think right now we need a library. I struggle with that because I don't know what a library is going to look like in 20 years. With all the technology we have and how much just our simple cell phone has changed, I struggle with that large capital improvement cost. If we were to rebuild a library or upgrade or put an annex in, I think the city should probably look at leasing. There are contractors that would build the building and lease it back. That way you're not getting into your capital improvement program, and it might be a more affordable way to do it, and then maybe you're not stuck with the building when libraries look totally different 20 years from now.
Mr. Weiss, 1 minute.
When I talked with the library director, I posed several questions. With today's technology, our cell phones, our iPods, our laptops, our cars talking to us now, you know, I said, is there a need for books? And she showed me information out there. The number one group right now that is calling for and wanting books is the millennials. And it was hard to believe, but they're the ones that want to put their hands on that book and have it. Libraries are needed. Technology is needed. Right now, this community has to figure out the needs of our community.
Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
I agree we need a library, and we need to do what it takes to keep that within our community. And if we need to put an annex out or a new library, again, I'm not convinced that it's a good capital improvement. So I would really look into leasing, so we're not stuck with an outdated building in 10, 15, 20 years. Thanks.
And this is our final question. And we'll start with you, Mr. Hike. Papillion is about 1/3 of the population of Bellevue, yet there is an exuberance and excitement within the city and things to do. A new $40 million recreation center, new businesses opening all the time, top 5 rankings in national surveys. Why the success in Papillion and, this is in quotes, Deadsville in Bellevue?
The static was every time you mentioned the city, but you're talking about Papillion? Is that what you said? I just filled in the blank. Again, it's everything we talked about tonight. If you don't have that tax base grown and new development and new jobs and new retail sales, and you can't have it. It's that simple. There's no magic potion here. It's right out there. We're just not doing what we should be doing. And we can have those things, and I think we can have them in fairly short order. Thanks.
Mr. Weiss?
Probably 10 or 12 years ago, Bellevue was looking to outreach to different organizations to have a community betterment center. When we were talking about that, we were talking about the city building a recreation facility, and it was swimming, it was lifting weights, it was running, it was going to be a big deal. We got hit so hard by the private sector. They came out and they said, why is Bellevue getting into our business? We had Gold's Gym out. We had all the gym memberships out there saying you're going to take it away from the city. So in recreation, I find it hard to try and compete with the private sector. The private sector is doing a great job. You have a gym down in South Roads, and you have different areas within Bellevue. Recently, up in my area on 48th and Giles, the Zimba craze is going on. It's crowded in the morning, the workouts. I don't think we can compete with the private sector in recreation and taking away from that. Bellevue does a good job with the Bellevue Public Schools has a center, the lead center, and the citizens use that in cooperation with the public schools, and I don't have the answer.
Mr. Hike, 1 minute.
The answer is revenue. It's that simple. If you want to build a swimming pool at your house, you don't have the money, you can't build it. It's no different. That's why everybody else is getting what they need and want. So I don't have a better answer except we will start generating revenue. Thanks.
Mr. Weiss.
Demographics, location, destination.
Well, that concludes the audience questions. I want to thank everyone who turned in questions. And now it's time for the closing statements. You have 2 minutes each, and Mr. Weiss, you will go first.
First of all, I would like to thank the Bellevue Chamber and the Executive Director of the Economic Development Corporation, Jim Bristow, and our moderator, the Chief Editor, Ron Petek. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk to the community. As Mayor of Bellevue, I will give my full attention to the office. The position requires that I have open and effective communication at all levels within and outside the city. The time has come for the city to invest towards economic development and the use of 840 in TIF to expand our tax base. In development, we need to ensure that the outlook on our projects live up to the expansion for the future needs of this community. Public safety, again, is a must for the city, and the council and mayor need to make a strong commitment to provide this service for our community. In planning, I've talked about the holistic approach. We have to look outside the box, i.e., can we accomplish this in a different way? We need to use resources from inside and outside the city to save money. As mayor, I will work with all levels so that Bellevue can be a city that is a destination spot. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Mr. Hike.
First of all, I want to thank all of you guys for coming out. I've been coming to these, I think, since they started, and believe it or not, looking around, it wouldn't look like a large crowd, but this is probably the biggest crowd I've seen here, actually. If you don't want someone that's going to rebrand our city and try to bring in new growth, I'm probably not your guy. I will represent this city with integrity and respect and put it in a positive light every chance I get. If you'd asked me 2 years ago if I'd have been up here asking for your vote, I'd have probably laughed. I love this city and I want the best for it, and I've got generations to represent, and I appreciate your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
I want to thank you both for taking time in attending the forum tonight, enlightening the folks who are here and everyone who is going to be able to see this on cable TV. I want to wish you both good luck in the general election And I'm going to turn things back over to Jim to close things out.
Again, I want to thank Bellevue University for allowing us to use their facility tonight and also helping film this. Our candidates for coming out and spending the night with us, both our council and our mayor candidates. It's an important election year for us, so I appreciate you guys' commitment and time to come out and inform the public. And also Bellevue Leader, I want to thank Ron Petak and his crew. They're going to have to go back tonight and put this in print for tomorrow morning, isn't it? So, fast night, but again, thanks, everybody. Look for this on Channel 17 and in the Bellevue Leader and YouTube. So, again, good evening. Thanks.